having me.
I hope you're well, sir.
I'm doing very well. I hope you guys are also well.
We are also doing well. The last time we had a conversation, you help us to understand exactly how bad the dry spell situation in the north and also parts of the Bono region was. The ministry has subsequently responded. 3 ministries together: Defense, Agric, and of course there is the Finance Ministry. I'm sure you have listened to their crisis response plan. What do you say?
Well, thank you very much again for the opportunity. Indeed, when we held our press conference last week regarding the flooding issue, we put in place some recommendations that we felt that the government should, as a matter of urgency, consider them to mitigate the effects of the dry spell on farmers. So when we listened to the minister on Monday, what we could deduce was that some of the recommendations that we highlighted were captured in his address. The only point where we did are some key gaps that we've identified in the measures that he put in place, and the fact that they were not able or they couldn't consult further or consult larger to understand the nuances of some of the measures that he put in place. The first one had to do with the ban that he issued on the exportation of grains, specifically maize, rice, soya, and to a lower extent, sorghum. And with the ban, it is not a new or a novelty where government decides to restrict the exportation of these grains to protect or to enhance local consumption. Indeed, in 2022, that was done under the former minister, and the result of that particular directive was catastrophic because you had farmers who were shortchanged due to the ban. Farmers were now limited to selling options because when farmers produce and it's time for buying, we have a number of options. Either we have local market people who come to buy, either we have foreigners from neighboring countries or even India who come to buy, either we have the agro-based industry. So in the case of maize and soya, you have the poultry industry coming to buy. So with this, you could tell that there was a natural interaction between demand and supply to get optimal prices for the farmers. Now, currently, if you look at even the agro industry, the poultry industry is virtually collapsed. So that industry is already chopped off. The other aspect of buyers are the foreigners who come to buy domestically. Now you are issued a ban on that exportation. What that means is that you have now limited the selling scope of farmers to just the local buyers. The challenge is that the local buyers sometimes do not offer fair prices to farmers for them to recover the investment from their production. So what we are essentially doing with the ban is that you are making it difficult for the farmers to sell competitive where they will be able to recover the amount they spent during their production. So what you could have done with this ban is that as you announce the ban, then you announce a minimum guaranteed price to say that for a good like beef, the minimum that a buyer should buy from a farmer for a 50 kg should be maybe 300 Ghana cedis. When it comes to rice, the minimum should be, let's say, 320 Ghana cedis. When it comes to soya, the minimum should be 700, 800 Ghana cedis. And then you instruct the various local buying companies or buffer stock that they should be able to go around to buy the produce from the farmers. So in this way, the farmers are guaranteed that even though they are not supposed to go and sell outside, domestically, they can sell and still make enough to recover their costs. But you don't do that. You issue a blanket ban on exportation, and then you instruct your Ministry of Defense to go around to the borders. And there's something that if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Because if you create a local and conducive environment, you don't need the military to go over there to prevent people from trying to export their goods. So that's the first one. Now, you mentioned that the Ministry of Defense also came in, where they announced that if I deployed their officers to go and man the borders. I find that very laughable. In the first place, we all remember the issue of the fertilizer subsidy program, where government itself was subsidizing fertilizer. And this same fertilizer was being smuggled through the borders to neighboring countries. Where was the Ministry of Defense and their agents for them to prevent the smuggling? They couldn't do it. As I'm speaking to you now, the menace of galamsey in Ghana is just widespread. Yet the military men, instead of going to areas to protect our land and our water, you've deployed them to areas and preventing people from exporting their own produce that they did with their own money. So I think that the whole exercise itself is an immediate reaction by government. I don't think the government thought through very well. I think that it is quite premature. And I think that the government needs to put in place measures to ensure that if this plan is going to be effective, farmers will not be shorted. Because if you don't do that, farmers will defy the other. Farmers will find a way to go through porous borders and sell their goods because they don't want to lose. So government should take a second look at that plan and put in place measures to ensure that farmers are not shorted. Then the second point about the provision of input and a cash transfer. And I think for which the ministry is requesting close to 500 million cedis from the contingency fund. I think that before Parliament should even approve this, they need to do a whole lot of question asking and ensure that the ministry is actually going to use the money for the intended purpose and actually scrutinize it. Because we are in this country where the ministry has spent close to $4 million on PFD from 2017, that we are still suffering from food insecurity. We are in this country where government has spent over almost $12 million on Paluku camp. But when you go to the side, there's nothing going on. We are in this country where you see a lot of expenditure meant to alleviate the plight of suffering people, or meant to be monies that are supposed to benefit the ordinary and vulnerable people. But we just see little done with most of the money being spent on politicians. And we all know that we are in an election year. And what is the guarantee that this money will not be used to enhance their party's quest to retain power? So for that particular money, and the fact that over 500 million is going to be used for this exercise, none of it is going to capital expenditure. None of it is going to ensure that we put up irrigation facilities. Because in the sense you are going to provide input, you are going to provide seed and fertilizer for farmers, for them to plant for the minor season, because we are expecting rain. And you provide them, and the rain do not come. What happens to all that investment? It has gone down the drain. So why don't you channel this money into putting in place capital investment, like the irrigation we are talking about, and other things that we need, to ensure that we don't come back to this situation again. So on that approach, we show that the parliament should restrict and should restrain themselves from immediately going through and trying to ensure that they do due diligence and proper value for money before they can approve it. Even based on that, we are even planning to petition Parliament to hold on to this until a proper scrutiny is done, and we are all assured that there is transparency and there is accountability before each money should be used.
But will that not only worsen the plight, because it's supposed to be an emergency crisis situation?
Yes, I agree. I agree it's an emergency, but who and what brought us here? It is this same leaders who brought us here through their inaction. And the fact that we are in an emergency doesn't mean we should allow to spend anyhow. I'm sure you all remember what happened to the during the period of COVID, where the Ministry of Health told us that because it was an emergency, they couldn't go through procurement processes for the vaccines. As we are here, government is here to recover all the money that we paid for the non-supply vaccines. I'm not sure as a nation we can afford to go through that part again. We are in a financial crisis, and we don't want anyone to take advantage of an emergency to flee the state. So even though we agree on a state of emergency, before we agree and approve of any of that, at least let us see and transparency, there's accountability, and there's value for money. Once we call on that and we demand that the ministry provides that right, then I'm sure we want to see that the money should be used for that purpose. But just in the name of emergency, and we allow a few people to dip their hands to public office and use them as they please, I don't think we should agree just for the sake of emergency. But that I humbly disagree.
Wow. So until that scrutiny is done, you don't think any of that money should be spent. But the question that keeps arising is the numbers that are even being put out by the ministry. They are talking about 871,000 hectares being affected, 435,872 farmers affected. Is it that bad?
The situation is actually very bad. It's very, very bad. Because even the data that was given, it was given from mainly regions in northern Ghana and then parts of the Bono region. I know for sure that there were some farmers in eastern region, some farmers in Volta region, some farmers in Uchi, who were also victims of this disaster. So that the numbers are that bad. That I know that the numbers are that bad. Because if you go to farms that have been destroyed and the level of devastation, I think that we really felt the effect of the disaster.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Mr. Norte.
You are welcome.
Bismarck Owusu-Norte is the Executive Director, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. So the same concerns that I've expressed. He said